Welcome to today's episode of That's Orgasmic. I'm Emily, a sex therapist helping you navigate the orgasmic and not so orgasmic moments in sex and relationships. Today I'm joined with Tarah and Ej Kerwin, who are dedicated to transforming couples' lives through meaningful connection and support. They're a married couple who co-founded the Relationship Renovation Counseling Center. Their goal is to provide real tools for couples to thrive no matter where they are. So welcome back to That's Orgasmic.
Well, thanks for
Thank
having us back,
you.
Emily. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so happy to be here. And I love how you said you're helping couples with everything that's orgasmic and not so orgasmic with couples because it's so true. Like we have amazing times with our partner and we have really difficult times, and it's the difficult times that we're all trying to understand better so that we can get through them more, healthfully, I guess.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, which leads into what I want to chat about today, which is infidelity. This
The
is
not so orgasmic.
not so orgasmic, and it's a real hot topic. People are very opinionated on the topic, feel very passionately, and it makes sense because a lot of people have had horrible experiences around infidelity. And I really just wanted to unpack that with you today and what that can look like within couples therapy as well, and just help give people a bit of a framework maybe to go off, or just even just a bit more of an understanding about infidelity. So I guess to begin, maybe like what are some of the most common reasons you'll see that people will have affairs, at least within your therapy sessions?
I mean,
Can I really quick start off with a statistic?
oh, yeah, we talked about this the other day.
70% of couples that experience infidelity but go to couples counseling heal.
Amazing.
I just had to share that. I had to share that statistic because it's higher than we thought, and it's awesome because infidelity happens, and it happens in a lot of relationships. But if you're willing to do the work in it, you come out, 70% of couples come out feeling happier and stronger together than they could have ever imagined. So,
Well, and I think another statistic that sort of answers your question a little bit too is like, why does it happen in a really broad sense is there's a statistic says most couples have some area of unhappiness in their relationship for 6 years before they go out and get help, before they go get counseling. And so oftentimes infidelity is a symptom, a bad symptom. It's like an infection, it's like a staph infection. It's a life-threatening infection to your relationship that is a result of some untreated issues that have gone on for a very long time. And sometimes it's very systemic. It's issues that are really particular to the couple and their dynamic. But then sometimes in our experience, it's been mental health problems for maybe one member of the couple. We've seen a lot of people with PTSD, with where infidelity and co-occurring disorders like substance abuse disorders,
sex addiction
are wrapped into when people have affairs. And then an affair you can't ignore. You can ignore some poor communication, you can ignore issues around money. There's something about fidelity that once it comes out, it's like this is the one thing, this is the game over problem.
And just to piggyback on that, you will, because I've been working with couples for almost 20 years now, but at our center, we've been open up for 9 years now. So we see a lot of couples with infidelity, and it's always a boundary issue within the relationship, like poor boundaries. And not because of the couple together. You'll usually find out that they never had boundaries growing up, or the boundaries were so strict. And then you don't know how to make agreements within your relationship. So those boundaries become more muddied and muddied and muddied. And then you're just like, how did we get here? So we support a lot of couples of kind of normalizing, like, you're not bad people that's happening. There's so much to learn and understand to make healthy relationships work that we don't get provided, right? Growing up or in the classroom, or even, even by our parents. Like we're just, like make it work. Don't get divorced. Don't cheat on me. Okay. What? Okay. So, I mean, it's, I know that's like a long answer to your question, but there's so many reasons behind it
Yeah,
So
and what I'm hearing is it can be a relational issue. And then also sometimes it can be like the individual themselves. But I guess even within my own practice, I've seen that it's often both people neglecting a certain part of their relationship over a long period
Sure.
of time. This is something that
Yeah.
has been building up. Cracks have been forming in other
Yes.
places. And it's not something that just overnight the partner wakes up one day, I'm going to go have an affair, and goes
Yeah.
and does that.
No, so many unmet needs, but that are unknown, right? And so when we're helping couples heal through it, it's like starting to recognize what the needs were and how to communicate them in ways that your partner can hear, and how you can be seen and heard in a way that feels good. It's just, we just kind of have these expectations that our relationship will always be awesome. And then we're crushed when it's not, right? And so then, right, infidelity, cracks can happen. It's like, oh, this person makes me feel like the person I used to feel like. Okay, I feel seen again. I feel heard again. The idea is like, how do we make each other feel that way always, so that we're not getting anything met outside of our relationship that should be getting met in our intimate relationship. And of course, we're speaking like a monogamous relationship, but even couples who are in polyamorous relationships have to have agreements that are okay, or it's going to be a nightmare.
I mean, I think it's always like an interesting, like, I feel like I tiptoe around when you have a couple come in and there's infidelity.
Yeah.
Oftentimes there's sort of like, there's the perpetrator and then there's the victim of the infidelity. And so oftentimes the person who's been cheated on is so distraught. I mean, it's so interesting. I always find it so fascinating. Like, the sort of value we put on fidelity. We put that above like everything else, right? And so then when that gets broken, and the other person comes in, like it literally drives people to the brink of insanity. I mean, they like can't think of anything else, and they see the text message strings, or they find the pictures, or they find out that the person was in their own house, right? And it drives them to the place of insanity. And so there's so much like triage at the beginning of just like, I mean, we had one couple that we worked with for, it was like a year and a half. They ended up coming in our podcast at some point and telling their story because they got through it. But it was like 6 months of just these torturous long sessions. And so, because then you
not
get to,
torturous for us, torturous for them.
yeah. And then you do like the tiptoe of getting to them to that place of what Tara said, of seeing like, this is about unmet needs. This is about ignoring problems that have been going on for a very long time,
because you didn't know the skills to take.
Well, and it's tricky as clinicians,
right?
Because there's such sensitivity around, like, you don't want to blame the other person for getting cheated on. But the reality is oftentimes there's things like you weren't looking at, you weren't discussing.
Yeah.
But it is a tricky process to take people through.
Well, and just to piggyback on that, it's also betrayal trauma, right? And so now a different part of our nervous system is activated. And there's not this time where you can be like, oh, healing from infidelity, that's going to be 6 months. Because every person is so different, and how our brain, handles trauma is different. And that, I mean, I say it's at least a year. And I think research shows us too, to even stabilize after that. So I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Sorry, Emily.
No,
well, it's such a
it.
compelling issue. It's such a big thing.
It is.
And you see people suffering so deeply. I mean, you see both of it. You see the person who cheated is just racked with guilt and shame and feels like shit about themselves.
They'll do anything.
And then you see the other person who's just like, their world just got ripped out from underneath them.
And you better not experience joy. I don't even want to see you smile.
And so then our job is to like help them make sense of it all, and help them get into a place where they can actually have empathy for one another. because neither of the positions are particularly an enviable place to be. It doesn't feel
Absolutely
great
not.
to have
No.
broken sort of the highest pact in marriage of like, you know, yeah, I cheated. Like I went out and did almost like the one thing, you know, just below murder, you know, is like cheating.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was just trying to think of that statistic, EJ, of what percentage of couples actually experience infidelity. I can't. Oh, I wish we had that now. Sorry, Emily, but I know it's like 33%, if not more.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't put that in there. I've got to look at
Yeah.
the latest research. It's a lot though. Like a lot of couples are experiencing this, so we have to look at like why is this such an issue, and it's a devastating thing, and it brings so much trauma to the individual, to the couple, and to the family. Right?
Mhm.
And then to the community, because that impacts our work, our daily
Yeah.
lives, our parenting style. Like
Mhm.
it's such a systems issue that we are, again, our hearts are in the right place. We also see the level of suffering that it brings. And it's so hard because couples will come in and like, we just want to talk about this and get through it. And I'm like, I know, but like if we talk about it right now in this way, you're not going to hear it differently, and you're just going to be re-traumatizing yourself. So it takes a really skilled clinician to create emotional safety in those sessions over and over again so that you can talk about the infidelity in a different way. And it's not going to be in the first week that you're going to seeking couples coaching or therapy. It's like, you know, just know that. But it's that, get me out of the suffering and get me out of it now. And I'll do anything for instant gratification. Again, we know research shows
That's a long
it's a
road.
process, but it's so worth it if you're willing to go through that. And it's really hard, but it's also really beautiful.
Is your first step then creating emotional safety? Like when a couple's come in, they've had a recent affair, what should they expect? Obviously, every couple's different, but I guess what's the most common approach that the two of you take?
So for me, I create safety containers very quickly because I say, and I'm pretty compelling about this. Like, you guys can talk about this and the way you've been talking about it for 23 hours outside of here, but within this hour, actually, our sessions are 75 minutes. I can't allow that for you guys to do that because I wouldn't be effective, and you guys won't be effective. So I put in safety containers. Like, how will both of you know that you're really activated or out of your window of tolerance and you can't see things clearly, hear things clearly? So I'll do a somatic kind of exploration. Always start with mindfulness before I begin session, right? Because they're ready to go, ready to say how bad it was and get all the pieces of info. Oh, I'm like, I can't do that for you today here. I'm so sorry, but let's start with this. So I set up safety containers, and safety containers are just this. If it starts to get escalated in a way that feels bad, what can we do? You know, what can each of you do? Whether it's go outside, take a walk. We have like little hourglass things, like these minute timers. Like I flip it over and I'm like, okay, let's focus on something red in the room for just like a minute. So just helping them. So that way they're learning how to regulate themselves in session. And the hope is not right away. They start to learn how to regulate themselves outside of session so that they're not in this trauma dyad. So I teach them those skills first, and then they might not notice it. And I'll be like, oh, that thing is happening where you just put the pillow over your chest. That means you're in a cautionary stance and you're feeling threatened. Can we talk about that right now? So I do a lot of that mindfulness somatic exploration to just make it feel okay. So their nervous systems aren't like in constant like defense mode.
I mean, I think everything Tara's saying is like spot on. I mean, I think you have to create an environment where they're letting some of the pressure out of a highly pressurized system.
Yes.
You know, and so one of the things is first you have to establish that this is a space in which you're going to process through the information, the feelings in a different way than when it's like totally unchecked in your living room, when you're totally activated. And a lot of that's like what Tara's saying, is like helping people realize when they're out of their window of tolerance and when they're in, a reactive place versus an intentional place. The problem with infidelity is it's so highly activated that in early sessions, it's almost like an unrealistic expectation that they're going to be able to do that very well. But you just try to find a little bit of space of that, a little more self-awareness, because you have to give them a place where it's safe for things to fall apart a little bit before they can rebuild. And like with that one couple, it was oftentimes just because oftentimes with affairs, you could tell the person almost every piece of data that you can remember about the affair, and there will always be new pieces of data that they find out that reactivate them. And so with a lot of couples, there's just this ongoing, like the person who was cheated on is finding out another thing and another thing. And so
psychoeducation on trauma.
So yeah, I mean, you're teaching them about the trauma cycle, and you're trying to help them learn how to regulate in difficult moments, so that eventually you can get to that place of looking at it more of as a system and understand their background and why one person doesn't know how to talk about their needs and the other person has this dynamic, and this is what happened in their relationship early on that led to this. So it's I mean, for me, I think though Tara is like spot on. It's like you have to create a safe place for them to talk about very difficult things,
and not right in the first session, but when the containment can happen, there has to be agreements made, because otherwise the work we're doing means nothing. So let's just say, I mean, I've had multiple different types of agreement, but let's just say it was an emotional affair online, right? Via some type of social media. There has to be an agreement that right now the two of us are in this emotional affair is a third in our relationship. It's not okay. And that there's an agreement that we stop any of that while we're focused on this, because otherwise nothing, if that behavior is still happening, and you can only, I mean, we're not like, I can't see into a crystal ball, like, oh, they're really being honest. Like, we've had couples where like the entire time they're still having an affair, and we're just like, what? But we can only do what we know. But it's like, okay, if you want to waste your time and money, that's fine. But, I'm very direct about it. But the agreements is like, while we're in here, like, I will not continue talking to this person. Like, I will cut it off. And if that can't happen, then we can't do couples counseling at this point, because it's not going to be advantageous whatsoever, because now you have a constant third, which is the Dr. Stan Tatkin piece that he's awesome. He also has a great podcast on betrayal trauma. We'll give that to you so you can plug it into your notes.
Amazing.
It's amazing. He's awesome. We give it to all of our infidelity couples who are ready to listen to it when they want to. But if there's this third that's in your relationship while you're also trying to heal, that's just not going to work, right? And so these agreements actually help feel safe. And it could just be an agreement, like when couples fight, they're like, I'm divorcing you. If this happens one more time, the agreement could be just like, you're not going to use the word divorce. And then if you are going to use the word divorce and you can't come up with this agreement, well, now there's going to have to be consequences, because it's not okay that we're breaking these agreements.
Yeah. And I think there is the person who cheated, they carry, a bit of a burden here of responsibility, in that they have to take certain steps to help their partner feel safe, and rebuild that trust. Like there has to be some, sometimes it's the partner who's been cheated on saying, I need to see the email that you sent to this person with the very clear boundaries that it is over, that you will not contact them, that you're working on your marriage,
transparency.
There is a burden that person has to begin the rebuilding process, because we know trust is only built back through action, in really sustainable ways. But there are certain things that a person has to do at the very beginning to say, like, to give just some scrap of trust that, like, maybe this can move in the right direction. Because that's a lot to ask of the other person, to just believe, to just be like, oh yeah, I'll just trust after I've just had my entire life feel like it's fallen into an abyss. Okay, yeah, I'll trust again. It's,
Well, and EJ, sorry, this just came up because this is like one of the hardest for me. I don't know about you couples to work with, is when the person that has committed the infidelity was like, I did it because of you. Like they literally have no remorse, no guilt, total blame, that they were totally justified in doing this.
Yeah.
That's a tough starting point.
That one's a little bit more difficult. It's more rare than the latter, where the person that has had the infidelity feels a lot of shame and guilt. But to me, under that is still shame, but I don't know how to be with my shame. And so I have to externalize all of that. And so then we're always, again, individual therapy in conjunction with couples, and collaborating with that individual therapist is huge too, because otherwise you're not going to be able to soften into that. And just helping couples recognize that, like, this is a symptom. It's not because you're bad or I'm bad, right? There's no bad parts of us. We just get really blind, I think, and need to feel seen and special somehow, and react, right? We get hijacked by many different things. Yeah. And I feel like when they're just seen and loved in that room, right? Unconditional positive regard, that's like, okay, like I can get through this. There's like a little bit of hope, right? And I'm a hope holder when those couples come in, and I have so much hope because we've helped so many couples. And I feel like just that energy, because we mirror each other, right? Just that energy is a little bit of a respite for them, even though it's still hard to come back every week. It's like they also know there's this respite to it, because there's someone else in the room that's not judging them and saying, you're such a bad person. It's like we're holding both of their hearts, if you will, that are both suffering. God, I sound like such a therapist right now.
And that's why I have you here. So for the person that's been betrayed, in that process, I guess, of them trying to collect information and make sense of what happened. Obviously, there's some people who want to see all the messages, that want to be told all the details as they're trying to make sense of it. But then the consequence of that is they now have that information and can then keep relaying it in their mind. It can impact their sex and, having images of their partner having sex with someone else. And being almost like PTSD kind of flashbacks, keep having these flashbacks. Do you have any advice on moving through that, or the first step in how to navigate that? Because it's something that I think, obviously, when you're in the heat of the moment of, I've just found out about this affair, I want to know everything, you're not necessarily thinking of what's going to happen down the track with that information.
I think one of the first things is helping the person who's been cheated on understand that process. In that when we have a traumatic event, when we're in a car wreck, right, the first thing we do is we get out of the car and we're like, what the hell just happened? Like, where did you come from? Am I bleeding? Like, is my kid all right? It's like, it's a natural part of the traumatic experience to try to gather as much data as possible, because it makes your brain, that executive functioning up front, feel empowered. Like, okay, I know what's happening. And so
we're in control. I get all the information. I'm in control. It won't happen again because I've got all the data.
And so there's a useful place in that, of like grounding yourself in like, okay, what's going on? How did you meet this person? Where did it happen? But our job, especially as therapists, then is to begin to know, like, okay, like when are we like stalled in a part of the healing process?
Yes.
Where are we stalled in the trauma process? Because now it's exactly what you said. Now it's entering into a re-traumatization thing. And it's just like, I'm no longer trying to orient myself. Now I'm just stuck looking for data, maybe because it makes me think I'm going to make myself feel safe. But really what I'm doing is I'm making myself more and more miserable. I'm screwing up my sleep.
Well, and then the partner on the other end feels exhausted by all the interrogations and doesn't know what to do at all. And it's just like, again, and then that pattern develops and we get why it's there, but you have to love both parts. You have to love our biological response to trauma. You also have to love that there's something so under there, that like something just happened that was out of control.
Yeah.
And that feels so bad. And then you get, so when the questioning starts, right? And I have couples do this on the sofa in front of me. I have them practice it, and they hate me for it. And I have them practice it over and over. I want to see all of the text. I want to know every position you had with them, right? I want to know every location. I want to know every phone call, right? And usually they're like, but I told you everything. Like I've told you everything. I told you where we kiss it. It's like, before that even happens, you're recognizing, wow, I can see you're in this place of suffering right now. This is why you're asking these questions. Of course, you're asking me these questions, but I want to tune in to that part first. Because now you're in an experience. You're not in a content hoop. And they might be like, well, it doesn't matter. That person's attuning first instead of like, oh, here we go again. Because then it's still about them. It's like, no, I can see the reason why you're asking those questions. I get it. Like you're in a trauma response. That's really hard. And I know this is really important to answer these, but I just want to recognize first that you're in a really place of suffering. And my behavior was a cause of it. That usually starts to connect them in the emotional experience of the suffering, which then you can get some skin in the game, if you will.
You can kind of get them to switch lanes there, because what happens then is, Tara is leading that couple through actually connecting in the moment, right? Of the person, instead of being like frustrated, I told you everything, I don't know what I could tell you more, is then saying like, oh my gosh, like I see just how much I hurt you. I see how destabilized you are in our life together because of my action. And I regret that, or I take responsibility for that. That has a way of like throwing a little bit of a stick into the spokes of repetitive thought patterns. And I think like for us, I think that's one of the biggest things is we want to get people out, no matter what they're struggling with, out of repetitive patterns, that are torturing themselves. They're torturing.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest piece, hold on, let me just, if I can.
I'm holding.
Because you're both suffering in those moments, right? The person that feels betrayed is suffering. The person that did the betrayal are suffering. And they keep making about, you just need to give me the answer so I can suffer less. And I just need to tell you that I keep giving you the answer so I can suffer less. They're totally missing each other. There is not a shared emotional experience. So it just takes one person, and it's usually the person who's less activated in that moment, to be like, oh my gosh, what's happening for you right now? They can't make it about themselves in that moment. They have to clearly be like, what I really want to do is convince you that there's nothing more. Oh, I'm just making it about myself again. It's, wow, I can see this is really hard. Let's talk about this. What's happening? That's it. Like what's happening for you is a huge question. But again, it's a shared emotional thing now.
I think a next like sort of evolution in this, and I have a couple I'm currently working with where this is where they're at, is the person who was with somebody else needs to do a deep dive into, okay, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Like what was actually going on? They have to take a deep personal look, because at a certain point, like I think that the person who's been cheated on has this emotional burden that the other one doesn't, because they're trying to heal a traumatic event for them, and then the other person is just like sort of like trying to do the things day to day to rebuild safety, and maybe even reconnecting in ways they haven't. But that partner that got cheated on, they need to know that the other person like really knows what happened.
Yeah.
Like, because for most people, cheating on your partner is a big betrayal of your personal values, and you got to be in a certain place to do that. And if you can't really communicate that to your partner and be like, okay, this is what was up. Like, I was in a dark place.
Mm.
I was, I'm realizing that this, and this was going on for me. It's really hard for that person to have that deeper level of repairing, of rebuilding trust, if they're looking at their partner and they're like, you can't show me any insight. You can't
Yeah.
show me like why it was you made these choices, because you just blew up our entire freaking life.
Yeah.
Why? Like, why? I need to know that. And I
No, I love that you said that. It's such a huge part, because then it also creates less hypervigilance. Like, oh, my person's trying to understand themselves. It's not just like, it'll never happen again. I promise I'll never go through this again. It's, you get to see, I mean, I've been working with the same couple for 5 years. And I remember her biggest thing was like, this will just be done, and then he'll do it again. And it was so important for him to continue his individual work for the sake of the couple and the healing, because she was really afraid, like, if he doesn't, I'll just carry us again and this will happen. And he was so willing and ready. I mean, he did all of the work. They continue to do all of the work. They're amazing. They're actually going to be on our podcast soon. And so I will let you know when that episode comes out, because they're truly going to inspire the world. I just know it. But it's really important. Him doing the work outside of just the couples therapy, she was like, yeah, like, even though this still sucks and I still have flashbacks, like, I see him consistently showing up 5 years later. He is not backing down. And that was enough for her. I mean, still hard, but enough.
I think that's an important point too. It's not something where you go to couples therapy and have a few sessions and it's all, once even if you decide to stop couples therapy a year, 2 years in, because you feel like you've gotten to a good place, this is still something that is ongoing, where you need to work on your relationship and work on yourself. And I think that's probably a key part that people don't do in the first place, is showing up for the relationship and working on themselves so that they can create a relationship that is serving both of them in the best way possible.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so interesting to like, because we've worked with a number of couples now who've made it through this, and you see them in the most painful moment of their life, maybe, and then they come out the other side so close, so deeply connected, and it's just so interesting. I mean, it really speaks to the love that they originally have, and how many couples really like freaking adore one another at one point, have amazing aspects of their relationship, and it happens to them, and that nobody's entirely like inoculated from this. So
Right.
this is a great thing for somebody who's listening to your show and is not in a relationship where this has happened, to look at like, hey, how do we like deal with stuff ahead of time? How do we not wait 6 years to go to get help and disconnection and happiness? How do I get to the point where we don't have a huge traumatic event in our relationship?
I've got to say one more thing, because we haven't addressed this. And I mean, we could be here for hours, Emily, but there's that person, let's just say, that got betrayed and their partner did the infidelity. And like, even though they want to make things work, like, what would other people think of me? I would be a total idiot for staying in this relationship. So there's like, I can't stay. People will think I'm weak. Oh, it keeps so many couples from healing. It really does, because they're afraid of what others might think, that they stayed in this relationship with this cheater. And I feel like, again, if I could get out and reach more couples around, like, You are not weak. Going through the healing of infidelity, even if you don't stay together at the end, is one of the bravest, strongest things you can do. Leaving and like letting others make that choice for you because fear of judgment, that's not going to help you heal the soul, if you will. So I had to bring that up because
No, it's
it
great.
keeps people from doing the work.
I think that's so important, and people feel so much shame around that. And you know, you hear people say, "Oh, if I ever got cheated on, I would leave straight away."
Yeah.
And I even think of my friends, family, people I've worked with, where they have this mentality that you have to leave if you get cheated on, and if you don't, that your self-worth is low, or that that's then a poor reflection on yourself for staying within that. But it is so true what you're saying, that it is so brave to show up and do the work and move through that, and then potentially create an even stronger relationship on the other side than what was there in the first place. And I think it's a real misconception that, and if you have an affair, that it's the end of the relationship and that your relationship can't actually improve.
I mean, the growth you can go through individually and as a couple through that trauma is, I mean, there's no words for it, you know. And I get it, like early on and all these things, but like we're talking like committed relationships where this betrayal trauma happens, and it's worth it. If you got kids, if you don't have kids, it is worth healing yourself and your partner together, because it usually is a symptom of something so much bigger than us that came into the system before.
Well, and in most cases, it's an act of despair.
Yeah.
You know, it's, again, you know, we have all of our sort of cultural, you know, judgment that we put into it. But rarely, it's generally coming out of a really kind of dark place, you know, of not being happy. You know, you're not cheating on somebody because you're in a really happy place in your life. You know, and I mean, it's ultimately also, I guess, like an act of love, of helping your partner get through it, you know, and forgiving.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
I think of that book by Becky. Oh, she's the big child psychologist. Anyway, she wrote a book called Good Inside. You know, that like we want to like get so mad at our kids when they do these awful behaviors, but like if you constantly remember they are good inside, we're all good inside, we have these beating hearts. The behavior was bad, that was not good, but like coming back to good inside, forgiveness, healing, like that's like maturity right there. That's building resilience in our own nervous system. Like we can get through even the darkest of times. But I just like love a big thing that happens in our treatment with our couples, especially when they're going through infidelity, is we take them back in their relationship timeline, like what made them fall in love and stay up on the phone, and like they just forget all of those things, and then the skills it takes to have a committed long-term relationship that feels like still passionate, right? Because of that whole, you know, shiny new car is no longer new. I've had it for 2 years. There's all these McDonald's French fries under the seat, and I don't care, but I used to like clean it up all the time. That habituation piece. And so there are ways to do that. We just have to have intention plus action in our relationship to always put in the work and make our partner a priority.
well, and that's like an important aspect of like what I'm sure you work with a lot of couples in, is it's not easy to have a really wonderful sex life with your partner over decades.
Yeah.
Not at
And
all.
yeah, and it's
Such a misconception.
yeah, and it's such like a, you know, it's just like such a shortcut to find somebody else to briefly have one with, because there's none of the complexity. There's, you know, it's just a, you know, you're kind of like just shortcutting to a, you know, big dopamine drop. And the reality is like is so many couples, they just struggle to have that consistency in their emotional and physical connection. of working through life changes and stressors and all of that. And so again, another like great preventative thing is like, don't wait forever to talk about what's missing in your intimacy with your current partner.
I know EJ and I have a thing, like if we go 2 weeks without talking about intimacy, it's not good. So we'll remind each other, and it's important to do it weekly, if not like daily, just around the emotional intimacy, because it bleeds into the physical intimacy. But if we go 2 weeks, we're like, oh, that's not good. And not 2 weeks without sex, but I'm talking 2 weeks without
Well, but it's
talking
important
about
to
it.
name it about like that both people have to have like the ability to name it, whether it's about
Yeah.
emotional intimacy or sexual intimacy, that like when you're feeling disconnected and it's gone on for a little while and you're not talking about it. We just did an episode about an intimacy anxiety. Is it starts to get really anxious. It starts to get really like, oh my God, like, and it's such a weird thing that on some level it's easier to go out and break through the barrier and meet somebody brand new and mess around with them than it is to with your partner that you've been with for decades, to like figure out how to talk about your intimacy, you know. And that's like, but we have to do it. Like Tara said, like we've made that agreement with each other now of like, if whatever it's about, if you feel like I'm emotionally distant, you let me know. If I feel like I'm craving physical connection and it hasn't happened, I need to be able to talk about it. Like that has to be okay. And we have to practice it because it's not going to be easy. We're going to screw it up. I'm going to act like a dick. Like you're going to like be defensive. You know, it's like, that's going to happen, you know.
I'm perfect. I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
It's so true though. It's so key having that ongoing communication, or at least a system in place where you can connect and be able to talk about these things, because I see it so often, particularly couples in longer term relationships. They go a few weeks and they go, oh my God, it's been a few weeks. This feels too scary and big to bring it up now. It will just happen. I'll wait. And then it goes another few weeks. And then maybe they do connect and like, oh, that felt clunky and awkward. I don't really want to do that again. So then they wait another few weeks again and again. And then they come into therapy and they're going, oh yeah, so we haven't really connected in months, or we only do every 2 months. And when we do, I'm not enjoying that. And it just feels weird and awkward. And it's like, of course it's feeling weird and awkward because you're not putting in the I guess those I'm trying to think what the word is, like the
habits.
Yeah, habits. And those little habits might feel a little bit uncomfortable in the moment, but it's going to feel way less uncomfortable than if you wait for a really big period of time.
Yeah, and the myth that like we shouldn't have to talk about it and it should always be amazing is so false. We did that too. We did like a podcast episode on the myth. Like because we will get couples in, and especially we have like an intimacy series piece, but we always build up to that. We're like, oh, so like how often do you guys talk about intimacy and sex? And they're like, never. Like, what? Again, we're not surprised, but it's like, oh, you guys want to have a really great connected intimacy, but you don't talk about it because we don't learn that it's important to do that. So we have to have this new habit. So it's just like, you know, a couple start laughing like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we haven't talked about our sex life, but here we are complaining about it.
Yeah. Well, and then another thing, looping back to the whole infidelity thing, is beginning to become really aware of like micro cheating, you know, of like small little boundaries that you're starting to cross over, maybe looking a little bit more, having a longer conversation, connecting with somebody over, you know, Instagram, you know, in a way that you wouldn't share that you did, you know. Little it's like flags. Like, look, if you truly want to, like, you know, sort of whatever, affair proof your marriage, your relationship, then stay on top of the little boundaries that you're starting to cross, that you stack those together. And pretty soon you've crossed a threshold where you're totally betraying your own value system. You're hurting your partner. You know, it's something you can catch ahead of time.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important for couples at the beginning of their relationship to define what cheating is? Because I've seen within my own therapy. One couple will go, well, that wasn't cheating, and the other goes, yes, it is.
Oh,
I think that's a huge thing, especially with younger people and like, sliding into people's DMs and all of that stuff and liking things and all that you do. Like, I think that you have to clarify all those boundaries. I mean, Dr. Stantak, and we quoted him early. He said, what really makes relationships work is making agreements and then standing by your agreements
and transparency.
Yeah. And so absolutely at the beginning of a relationship, Tara and I had some moments like that early on where like Tara was trying to push some boundaries and I was just like, that's not that.
Well, and I'm thinking of this one couple because they were younger, like mid-20s, and they had been together. And he's like a total like extrovert and always commenting on people's Instagrams and out there. And so she thought, because they'd been together dating for a couple years, never an issue, never. Then they get married, and she's like, I just thought you would then like delete them from your, like you would stop hurting things. And he's like, what? Why would I? She's like, because we're married now. Like that's just the boundary. And he's like, but we've never ever once talked about this. But so there's those expectations that one person's like, of course he's just going to stop hurting women in swimsuits. He's like, I never thought it was an issue because it's never been discussed in our relationship because I'm a free spirit in that way, but I would never cheat on you. But no, we never had that. So yes, it's super important to talk about the boundaries around it in different transitions of your relationship too. Oh yeah, really important. But it's just like couples, they're together and they love each other and the oxytocin is flowing. We don't have to talk about that. It'll all be good.
Yeah. And I think people often just assume that people will have the same approach to things, especially like cheating. I think because we've seen, particularly in society, it's kind of approached from society in the same way, like we discussed earlier. If someone cheats, leave, and if and this is what cheating is. So I think people sometimes just assume that we'll have the same thing, or it's not until you're in the thick of it and you're like, actually, that's not sitting right with me, and maybe weren't aware that that's something that would feel like a boundary being crossed.
I mean, one project, it's dear to our hearts. It's in the process, but it's like relationship renovation for newly committed couples. Like having that prevention so it doesn't get to the place where you're like, again, the book where you had me at goodbye. Like couples wait until it's either this or nothing. So we're trying to get out there globally, like do not wait for a crisis to happen. So, like
define your boundaries.
Define your boundaries, have your agreements, talk about your values, talk about what cheating is, emotional cheating, physical cheating, boundaries, you name it. So we're going to get it out there in the next 6 months. We've got this.
I can't wait for that. I think that'll be such an awesome resource for people.
And so important because, again, like 50% divorce rate, but people wait 6 years to go into therapy. We've got to change that. Like it's not okay. So if we can bring something into it, right, newly committed, like, hey, this could happen, but let's try to prevent ourselves. Like I've done my job in this world.
Yeah. Is there any final things you would, I guess, want to say before we finish up today's episode around infidelity and affairs? For the people listening, whether they're going through that right now, wanting to avoid it.
I mean, I guess if it's something that's happened recently, you can make it through it. If both people are committed and you get the right help, you can absolutely make it through it. I would want to give some hope around that. And then on the flip side of like, hey, there's definitely some things you could do to avoid this from happening in the first place.
I mean, I just feel like people on either side, like when a betrayal trauma hits for both people involved, that it's really hard because the amount of suffering, you just want to like get away from it And we're like, no, you gotta be with it. But being with it is actually what gets you to the other side. The other things are just instant gratifications to try to medicate from it or avoid it. So just knowing, I think you can handle this. You've got this, right? It's that trust that no matter what, I can handle this. I can handle this suffering. It's going to be really hard. But there's just like this little internal, like, I've got this. Bring it. Right? Life is already messy. Like, I got this too. So, yeah.
Nice.
Thank you. I
I
liked yours too.
Thanks.
Well, thank you both so much for coming back on and chatting about this topic with me.
This was awesome.
Where can the listeners find you? I know you would have provided that answer last time as well, but just to refresh their minds, where can they find you?
I mean, relationshiprenovation.com is our website. It has, all of our information, has links to our YouTube channel.
Instagram.
Instagram, Relationship Renovation at Home, which is our online program for couples to sort of in a structured way connect more deeply.
Relationship Renovation podcast. We have like over 240 episodes talking on infidelity. Couples share their stories going through it, creating emotional safety, intimacy, you name it. We've talked about it.
Amazing.
So yeah.
I'll put everything in the show notes. But thank you again so much for just coming
fun,
on
Emily.
and sharing your wisdom.
And thank you for the work that you're doing with couples, because
giving them the place every week that they can learn about physical intimacy and sex and how to talk about it. That is like so important.